Welcome back to the show. The stage is set. Somebody roll that beautiful intro.
Digital Perspectives with Brad Kimes. Come on in.
Welcome back to the show. You can follow us on X, YouTube, and digperspectives.com for exclusive content. Right now, $2.88 trillion market cap for crypto. The market's off 3%, but we see Bitcoin now down to 83,900. Ethereum down to 2,200. XRP down to 215. After climbing back 2.3 in the last hour, we see that XRP is still off 2.2 on the 24-hour. We're off 19.3 on the 7-day. Ethereum's off 20.8 on the 7-day. Bitcoin's off 14.9. Whole market bleeding heavily here, and I think it's a temporary bump. That's what my thoughts are, not financial advice. I've been buying the dip, ladies and gentlemen. You can bet on that. Damn right. It's built into me just like a habit. It's just, I do it, and I'm so glad that I do. Dipping all the way down to 197. I got it at like 208, 207, whatever it was early this morning. It dipped down, missed that 197. Damn, that upsets me. Just to get it below $2 would be incredible, right? Ranging between 197 and 223. We'll keep an eye on it. Remember, you can follow us in the Freedom Zone. Click join that button right there and join us. Get all your daily videos with zero Google ads, plus the extra content that we're covering. And there's a lot to cover. And there's a lot to tell you about, too. We got breaking news. David Schwartz, the CTO from Ripple, is going to be on stage again this year at XRP Las Vegas 2025. What will be the topic of conversation? Well, you will have to join us to find out. But you know what? Ask anybody that went last year if they're glad that they came to hear it, because it was incredible. And so many others will be there. Make sure you check out the list. Paul Barron Network, Boone Bergsman, Bitwise's Matt Hogan, Canary Capital's Stephen McClurg, Phil and Dom Kwok. I tell you, Easy A, representing over 1 million builders, ladies and gentlemen. Yes. Absolutely. Gregos Vlachos from Axelar, president of MoonPay, Nancy Beaton, the chief revenue marketing officer for Uphold, Mark Otto from Monerex, XRPLedger, building a bank on the ledger, Austin King from Omni, Stephen McClurg, as I said, from Canary Capital, Kevin Maloney from iTrust, Dr. Brummer from Blueprint. Dr. Blummer is also one of the highest decorated lawyers, Georgetown law professors in the universe. This guy is amazing. He's going to be sitting down with none other than Brad Garlinghouse, the CEO of Ripple, and the CEO of Uphold, Simon McLaughlin, and so much more. Ladies and gentlemen, do not mess around. I'm telling you, you're going to want to be at this conference. Make the investment. Look at this. Snoop Dogg ditches Spotify to launch his music exclusively on HBAR using Hedera native Tune FM. I can't play that because I'm sure it's copyright, so I can't do it. But shout out to Snoop and shout out to HBAR for that one. BlackRock is adding a 1% to 2% allocation to the $48 billion of iShares Bitcoin Trust ETF in its target allocation portfolios that allow for alternatives. Well, guess who's been buying the dip? Right? And that's what I've been doing, stacking my pennies next to their dollars. They're buying Bitcoin, I'm buying XRP, we're all buying the dip. I'm buying the dip, you're buying the dip, who's buying the dip? I'm buying it, yeah. I need some chips to go with that dip. All right, now let's set the stage. Here's the part of the video I'm excited to get to. I want to run this through for you. I have an interview of David Schwartz that is 9 years old, but wait until you hear what he says. I'm telling you, all I could say is, but let's set the tone, because what matters is that it was...
Here too. So I just mentioned the market structure bill. The other...
What matters is that it is 9 years old, but why it matters so much today is because what is happening today. Let's set the tone for what is happening with the new crypto AI czar telling you how soon we could have stablecoin legislation passed.
Quickly here too. So I just mentioned the market structure bill. The other area is stablecoins. And Senator Haggerty, he's on the banking committee. He just released a stablecoin bill. There's counterparts in the House. And what the four chairmen indicated is actually they're going to take up stablecoins first, and then market structure will follow very quickly. So I think we could see a stablecoin bill pass Congress in the next several months.
There you have it. So now, that is hugely interesting. We know we got to have stablecoin bills. We also know that Senator Cynthia Lummis just sat in the meeting yesterday and said this.
Many members of the Senate were still trying to wrap their heads around what is a Bitcoin, what is a digital asset, what is a stablecoin, what is a Howey test. And so now we've arrived at the point where we can move forward. We're on the precipice of finally creating a bipartisan legislative framework for both stablecoins and market structure. I hope we can get both pieces of legislation to President Trump for his signature this year.
And I believe that is the mission. Now, why is that so important? Well, we know Ripple payments will integrate real USD stablecoin in early 2025. That's what they said. They said it. Furthermore, the company's enterprise-focused payment platform, Ripple Payments, will integrate real USD early next year. That is from Ripple right there. And knowing we're on the cusp, and some have said we could get stablecoin legislation as early as April. How about that? Now, the reason I'm bringing that up is because here's the interview from Bitcoins and Gravy from 9 years ago. And listen to what David Schwartz said 9 years ago. Take a listen.
We're going right to payment alliances. We're going to financial institutions. We're going to the Federal Reserve and central bankers. We really are trying to work this from the top down, get liquidity into the system, get cash in and cash out pathways so that it will be more useful for everyone. It's kind of surprising that we're where we are, that we're being taken seriously by central bankers, that we have banks that are using the Ripple network today to make payments between banks.
Yeah, you know, I feel like a lot of people within the Bitcoin community may have missed or still missing what Ripple is actually trying to do or what Ripple is capable of. I think a lot of people still look at Ripple as a competitor to Bitcoin, something that's competing with Bitcoin in the same way that a lot of people look at Ethereum as competing with Bitcoin when it's not necessarily the case. Is that right?
Now listen to this answer right here. Bitcoin maxis aren't going to like this, but remember the XRP-Ledger Layer 1 has a decentralized exchange built directly into it. And we know that Bitcoin has been on the XRP-Ledger since 2014 from Chris Larson. But listen to what he says here.
Subtle distinction here. To some extent, you can look at Ripple as competing with Bitcoin as a payment system. But Ripple doesn't really compete with Bitcoin as a currency. In fact, one of the major use cases for the Ripple network right now is moving Bitcoins around because it provides faster settlement. Mm-hmm. So if you believe in Bitcoin as a currency, Ripple is a good way to move that currency around. It's not a competitor.
There you have it. It's not a competitor. That's the end of that story. That's 9 years ago in 2016. Yeah. Oh, I'm not done with you yet. And now, coming back to refresh everybody's memory, Brad Garlinghouse and Stuart Alderati, Chief Legal Officer, met directly with President Trump. Yes, more than once. What do we know? The president validated the Fed coin approach by David Andelfato from the St. Louis Fed for the use of XRP. That door is now officially open. How quickly an old narrative becomes new again. Oh, that's right. It was never an old narrative at all. It's the plan. Remember when the agenda came out for the crypto industry, this is before David Sachs was even selected. Foster stable coins, digital tokens that are pegged to the dollar. That was one of the main objectives. Create a strategic national Bitcoin stockpile. It's still in the discovery phase, right? In the questionable phase. We'll see where that goes. That could end up being all U.S. domiciled assets. But the point is we know now today that there has been legislation set forth that the Federal Reserve cannot release or issue a CBDC direct to the citizens of the United States or anywhere else. And that's a huge step forward. I like that. Well, I'm bringing this up as a reminder because I think Honorable Christian Carlos got it right here when he talks about that there be an independent private enterprise It could be quasi-governmental. There is certainly a role for strict standards and a role in the government, which I spelled wrong. Nonetheless, let me see if I can fix that really quickly. Can I fix it? It's too late. I can't fix it. I typed so fast. Never mind. Listen to this clip.
All good.
Giving them a standard set of technological protocols to use. So in short, our proposals, I think, is a quite simple one. And that is that there be a independent enterprise. Now, it can be a quasi-governmental. There's certainly a role for strict standards and government role in this. But having been in the government, knowing how difficult it is to actually do technological innovation in government, being a representative of government that couldn't build a medical website, and after 3 tries, eventually went to the private sector to get it done. This has really got to be built, if it's going to be built on time and it's got to be built with private sector involvement.
There you have it.
Protocols available to the entire existing financial ecosystem, to banks, payment providers, and others, standard set of protocols, and an ecosystem, to banks, payment providers, and others, standard set of protocols. And it would not be in the business of collecting data. It would be in the business of developing technology only. The relationships that people would have with their providers would be their existing relationships today, but who knows what new entrants to come.
I tell you, that's pretty fascinating to me because it sounds a lot like he's describing Ripple and the XRP Ledger to me. Now I have another clip, and this one here is just bomb dropping as far as I'm concerned. 9 years ago, David Schwartz answers the question, is it possible the US dollar becomes the reserve currency of the Ripple protocol network? David Schwartz, yes. What are they launching here? The RLUSD? Why are they not using it yet for their enterprise clients? Because I believe they're waiting for stablecoin legislation. That's my speculation. But the fact that they were having this conversation 9 years ago tells me exactly this. They did not come up with the idea of releasing a stablecoin in the last month or a few months. This has been a conversation from day one, period. Fast forward to today and the recent launch of the RLUSD and stablecoin legislation that is expected to pass this year. XRP is the native intermediary currency. David Schwartz. Remember, James Wallace told us that the native tokens aren't XRP at all on the ledger. It's the CBDCs and stablecoins, right? That's the way to think of it because you're trying to think of things in a manner that create mass adoption. You want to bring something to market that allows everybody to want to use it, but not be forced to use your asset, right? That's why it's the native intermediary currency. Take a listen to this clip here. It is bad to the bone. Take a listen.
Now, it's different with dollars. With dollars, they connect to the real world, the non-electronic world, in various ways. And so in order to make a dollar electronic, someone has to hold that dollar and someone that you trust to pay you back that dollar on demand. Now, this is exactly what banks do in traditional payment systems. If I want to pay you money and I have $50 in my pocket, I'm probably not going to mail it to you. What I'm going to do is I'm going to have that $50 in a bank and I'm going to send you a check. But the important thing to understand about the way that trust works in Ripple is that it doesn't matter whether the sender and recipient trust the same party. So I can trust a local bank in my country or my city. You can trust a local bank in your country or your city to hold the funds. and the payments just work perfectly smoothly. So it's not like a big central system where everybody has to trust the same party, but somebody has to hold the funds, and the individuals who put those funds in the system have to trust those people who hold it. It's the same thing that you do with a check. Like if you want to receive money, you have a bank account somewhere, and people pay you by making that bank owe you more money, and you're trusting the bank that they'll pay you that money. If the bank disappeared and didn't pay you that money, then those payments, you wouldn't actually be able to materialize the funds from those payments. One of the things that we're working on is getting regulated financial institutions that have FDIC insurance and analogous protections in other countries to be those trusted entities to hold the funds. That's another reason it's important to get financial institutions on Ripple. You're already trusting financial institutions to hold your money. So
Well, let me cut in right there because you need to see this. Remember when Brad Garlinghouse said this at the first swell? Listen carefully.
Yes. I mean, ultimately, as you know, Ripple is really focused on how do we enable an internet of value? How do we make value move the way information moves today? And that's our big kind of multi-year, 10-year view of how the world will evolve. And it's really how do we dial that back and to make it tactical and real today and tomorrow. And I think if you want to enable an internet of value, you've got to connect the repositories of value. Right. And the repositories of value, as big as the Bitcoin value proposition is today, the banks own trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars of assets. So if we want to enable an internet of value, we've got to connect the banks and payment service providers and MSBs. And we're excited to have made a bunch of progress on that. So
now, that is 2017 that this happened. So now let's go back from 2017 to 2016 and listen to the rest of this talk. Is exactly what David said here. You can see you're using your local financial institutions. They're already talking and working back then with banks. Take a listen.
if you can use your local financial institutions, then it really isn't any additional trust.
You know, the repositories?
Address the value of XRP for our listeners and for that guy?
Well, obviously it's hard to predict the future, and there's certainly no such thing as a sure thing. Risk and reward always come in pairs. So the thinking is that if you have a large number of currencies on the Ripple network and a large number of institutions issuing them, it will be very difficult to find a direct path between two currencies. So if you have US dollars at, issued by a local chain, and you want to pay somebody in Guatemala who gets cash at his grocery store, the probability that there'll be someone offering to trade one of those currencies directly for the other is pretty low, and that the liquidity will probably be through some intermediary currency. The Ripple network has a native intermediary currency called XRP, or sometimes called Ripples. And the
native intermediary currency. And I believe the reason he's making that distinction, native intermediary currency, is because it's the other assets, the other tokenized sovereign money of the world, and then other instruments like stocks and bonds that are really looked at as the native currencies of the ledger, because you're trying to serve the world, not force XRP down everyone's throats. You use that pairing in XRP where it fits best and it's most applicable.
The advantage of Ripples is that there is no counterparty. There's nobody. It works just like Bitcoin. Your Ripple balance is just a number on your Ripple account on the Ripple network. And the theory is that because XRP doesn't require any trust or anything in common, it can flow between any two accounts. You don't have to agree to have somebody hold it for you. And so if that becomes the premier intermediary currency, then two types of people will want to hold XRP. One will be people who don't know what currency they'll need next. If the path from dollars to euros tends to go through XRP, then if you don't know whether you'll need dollars or euros, it makes sense to hold XRP, because then you only have to pay half the spread. And then the other thing is market makers. If you're just trying to make a market and people who are selling their dollars want XRP because that's what they need to buy euros, then if you want to be able to buy dollars, XRP is the currency that you're going to need to hold to buy them. If that's the way it plays out, then the demand for XRP will go up, and therefore the price will go up. But again, nobody's crystal ball is clearer than anybody else's. That is certainly something that may or may not happen. So it happens automatically when you make a payment. The network finds the cheapest path. That might be through XRP, it might not. It could be through US dollars, it could be through Bitcoin. There could be multiple paths that you draw from so that you get the very best offers on multiple order books. So you wouldn't be consciously aware, unless you really drilled into what was happening behind the scenes, you wouldn't necessarily be consciously aware of what intermediary currencies you held for a notional split second. But because XRP can flow between any two accounts and is trustless, it has a privileged position inside the Ripple network that could cause it to be preferred as an intermediary currency.
I see.
If that happens, demand will go up.
I see. Now, what if it doesn't happen?
It certainly might not. It could be that, for example, the Federal Reserve decides to issue dollars directly onto the Ripple network, and everybody thinks that's the perfect intermediary currency. And then XRP doesn't get that kind of role, in which case you would not see that increase in demand.
I see. Is it possible that just as the USD is the reserve currency of the world right now, against what a lot of people would like to see, is it possible that the USD could eventually be the reserve currency of the Ripple protocol, Ripple network?
It's certainly possible.
You know, it's funny, and we've already launched the real USD on the network. Keep listening.
Could also see another government, any country could do this, introducing, let's say, gold, 100% reserve backed gold on the Ripple network, and people might decide, ooh, that's what I want to use as my reserve currency because...
Isn't that what BRICS was doing?
Like, maybe the government of China, let's say, does that and people trust them. There's certainly any number of ways this could play out. To some extent, Ripple Labs has bet on XRP. Ripple Labs holds an enormous number of XRP, and our primary business model is that they'll appreciate in the future. But of course, there's no guarantee.
I see. So now that concept that the US dollar could be the reserve currency of Ripple, of course, you know that people hearing this show and hearing that, if they've not heard that before, talk about ripples, right? Talk about ripples going out. That's going to cause a lot of people to be afraid and to think, wow, we don't want Ripple, because the U.S. government, I'm sure now, since they heard this episode of Bitcoins and Gravy, they're onto it for the first time. They're slow, they're sleeping usually. Now they're going to work as hard as they can to get the U.S. dollar to be the reserve currency of Ripple, and we're back to the same place we were before Ripple and Bitcoin and all of this. What do you say to someone like that?
Well, they have to compete in a fair playing field. So the intermediary currency could be the U.S. dollar, and you can still hold whatever currency you want. You can hold Bitcoin, you can hold Ripples, and that would just be where the liquidity is. And they would have to compete on a completely fair playing field, because people don't choose intermediary currencies. They just make payments with the cheapest path they can find. So it's going to be competitive, just like it is outside the Ripple network, except people will be able to move more easily between currencies. So if one currency has a small advantage that only affects a narrow group of people, they can still hold that currency without having the large cost that they would normally have to bear from making a different choice.
I see.
So it does enable more freedom of choice with currency. And in that kind of market, it remains to be seen what will be the preferred currency. It could be Bitcoins.
Yeah.
And we already know now, this many years later, 9 years later, it is not Bitcoin, right? Bitcoin has failed as a currency since then. That conversation's out for the moment for Bitcoin. But nonetheless, here's a reminder from James Wallace that XRP is not the native token. The way to see it is not the native token of the XRP ledger. It is, in fact, the native intermediary currency, the way David Schwartz says it. But the way to think of it in the respect of mass adoption is to think about getting the rest of the world tokenized onto the ledger. And that starts with the sovereign money known as central bank digital currencies. Take a listen here.
One of the ideas is you use a sort of a neutral bridge currency to go from one to the other, similar to the model I explained earlier, where with our on-demand liquidity. But the core offering really is not XRP. There's no XRP involved. It's the native token is the CBDC.
There you go. That's it right there. And that's the way to understand the business model and how they're going out here in the world to make sure that you're offering to bring something inside that complements the financial system and doesn't threaten it. That's exactly how you do it right there. Bullish breakout levels, 220, 230, 260, 283, and 310. But let's look at that downside a little bit. If we slip any further, we could see us go from that 190, which we were at 197 we hit, or 167 if things roll over anymore. So there are your numbers to watch, ladies and gentlemen. Not financial advice from me or anyone else. It's just my digital perspectives and global domination for Ripple, XRP-Ledger are well in play. And I believe firmly that the U.S. market infrastructure is going to reveal a huge public-private relationship with Ripple and the XRP Ledger. That's my personal thoughts and my digital perspectives. I'll catch all of you on the next one.